people can easily see it. I also see how it functions as a fundraising tool, fundraising conduit, I guess. An easy place to have people submit their credit card numbers. What else can the internet be, and do you think Google is part of making that happen in this election cycle right now?
Well, we spend all day trying to figure out how you should live your whole life on the internet. Right? So, sorry, it is what we do. And one of the characteristics of the internet is it changes the power structure between individuals and established institutions. So you see that over and over again. In Google's case, we have a lot of things that we're doing as part of the convention. Obviously, this activity, it was obvious that there was an important community that did not really have a seat at the table. Basically, this group, if we wanted to be part of that, on whatever terms made sense for you guys. And it's worked out incredibly well. We're very happy with that. We're doing a lot of other things. For example, there's historically this notion of, you have to have, there's 12 different layers of security and badges. Why don't we just let people in using digital technology? So we have things like, we have 3D models of the various stadiums and so forth. We have cameras and so forth, which are showing what's really going on to the degree that we can get it. We've got a interview yourself and put yourself on YouTube. And remember, one of the fundamental characteristics of people is everybody wants to be on television, right? So we give everybody an opportunity to be on television, and they can show it to their mom, which is fundamentally what life is all about. But it matters, right? It matters big time. Maybe an even more serious thing what we're trying to do is trying to get it to the point where people who want to vote can figure out where they're registered and where they should vote. Like, what a concept. And it turns out that the information about polling precincts, zip codes, registrations are in databases that are sort of from the mainframe era. And so getting all those things into a system so that you can literally say, I've decided to vote. Amazing. Where do I vote? Those kinds of data collections. Putting those on Google Maps is very important. Is Brittany here? Did I see you? Can you just show one slide? This is Brittany Bonet.
Hi everybody, I'm Brittany Bonet, and I'm here to talk briefly about what we're doing to put registration information and polling location information on Google. If we could get this slide up. We have an example. This is still sort of in beta. What we're trying to do is...
I love showing slides in a translucent tent.
Yes.
So imagine what the slide says. Sorry. It works really well at night, guys.
Essentially, we are trying to stay consistent with Google's mission of making the world's information universally accessible and useful, and part of this information is polling location and registration information. So we're attempting to work with local election officials to organize this data and put it online on Google Maps so that a user will simply input their address and be able to find their registration site, their polling location. And this is an effort that will be ongoing towards November, and we are, there we go. There's an example of it. And we are steadfastly working to collect this data. We want to make it findable for users, because right now, as most people know, it's a maze for people to wade through these local election sites. And we believe that we can attempt to be the central source for that information.
I would just have one question, and sort of, I guess, that has an embedded comment in it on that. And the idea of making it easier for Americans to vote, not only to know where to vote, but to know how to vote, to get through the maze of, as Brittany, as you described, this sort of, I guess, matrix of confusing, out-of-date electoral systems that we've got in this country. To make it easier for people to vote has become a partisan thing in this country. The idea of it being more difficult to vote has been a political goal of the Republican Party, and to make it easier to vote has been a goal of the Democratic Party. They may think that you're siding with the Democrats on this.
Well, the principle of voting is one that was established a long time before you and I were born.
A long time before political parties.
And there's a long history of trying to exclude people from voting, especially minorities and so forth, which I think is reprehensible. So this is a simple thing that all of us who care about democracy can do, is get more people to vote. I think it's well established that voting participation is declining in our country, and it's particularly declining among young people. Since Google is full of young people, I sort of asked them, why are you not voting? And their position is, it doesn't matter. So to the degree that we can make civic duty and participation fundamental, I think it's better for the country. The United States is a remarkable democracy. I'm very proud to be a citizen, as I know you are. And the principles that were established under the Bill of Rights and the Constitution and so forth are not negotiable, right? Including the right to vote.
On the uncomfortable issue of taking sides, one of the things that I'm sure you get asked about a lot is to have simultaneously going on in Google land and in politics these two things. In Google land, we have more and more living our lives online. We have, Google Gmail, GChat, Google Documents, Google Maps, Google Finance, all of which I have used to a certain extent at some time, and therefore a lot more about me being known to in some way by Google. We've got that going on in technology and in your business. And on the other side, we've got a very, very aggressive and oftentimes very secret effort by our own government to spy on us, to get more information about us. And I think the fear that's come out of these two things happening at once is that even if Google is not trying to be evil, the concentration of information about us through all these different tools that Google provides may make it a lot easier for the government to be very much more evil than it could have been if Google didn't exist. Is there a responsibility, a corporate responsibility in terms of holding up the trust of your customers, but also sort of responsibility as an American corporation trying to do this, to be an active force in resisting government efforts to get more information about its citizens secretly?
There's a problem with the government, which is they have guns and we don't. And so the term resistance, you want to sort of be careful. The reality, and I have to say this bluntly because people get confused, we are required to follow U.S. law, and we do so, even if we don't like it. And as the CEO of a public company or even a private company, there can be no other answer. The good news about America is that we have judges, we have a court system. And if you get, for example, an overbroad subpoena, as we did over essentially invading people's sort of these broad searches for information that's not relevant, you can convince a federal judge to restrict that. The reason I say it so precisely is that such good things in America are not necessarily true in other countries. So you want to look at this on a country-specific basis. From a Google perspective, we operate on the first principle of the user's privacy. We operate that essentially our image and what they care about. And we do worry that as this information gets collected, it becomes a treasure trove. And you can imagine, in the worst possible case, the scenario you described, which is sort of a spook scenario, where we know everything you're doing, and so the government decides to track you. Now, this is not a new phenomenon. If you look at the history of the FBI under J. Edgar Hoover, this occurred in the 40s and 50s with what were then now, which were at the time illegal and are certainly illegal now, activities, which were found to be wrong. So there is a history of this. But it's important that we be aware of it. And one of the reasons to be optimistic is that in the 40s and 50s, you couldn't talk about this stuff. And now, because of the nature of the internet, the nature of free speech, the blogging community, and so forth, if these scenarios were to occur, people would know instantaneously. So part of the way that I answer the question, how do you know you should trust Google, is the moment we did something untrustworthy to any one of you, every other one of you would know within about 5 nanoseconds. And it would become the conversation in the room, and you all would very quickly move to a competitive choice.
Privacy is a hard thing to get people exercised about, particularly when the trade-off is convenience and free software that makes life easier. You think, yeah, maybe Google has the biggest database in the world and I'm in it, and I'm a little uncomfortable about Google in China, and I'm a little